Taiwan, famous for its numerous lifestyles, friendly locals, and being a city culturally diverse and open-minded, has now been facing a potential threat from its own neighbor, China. Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of the Info Feed. Today we will be going over the details and repercussions of the conflict between China and Taiwan that took place last year. Before going into the video, please subscribe to our channel if you're new. Also press on the bell icon for more exciting updates. Taiwan is an island in the western Pacific Ocean that lies roughly 160 kilometers off the coast of southeastern China. For years, it has been a neighbor country to China, exporting approximately $92 billion worth of goods every year. But recently, there arose a conflict between the two countries, and it has been growing with worldwide attention. After conquering the popular protests in Hong Kong, China is turning to the next target, Taiwan, a self-governing country. The two have been an invigorating conflict for decades, but a fight for the island has recently stepped into a dangerous new stage. The one country, two system principle has come to an end, and Beijing is running out of diplomatic options to reverse Taiwan's slant towards independence. Higher US military officials believe that China could take over Taiwan within the next 6 years, considering the fact that America is preoccupied with domestic issues. Beijing has been stockpiling weapons, widening its navy, and drilling for amphibious operations. But how did it come to this point? And hypothetically speaking, how would such an assault take place? Taiwan, with indigenous people have long inhabited, became part of the Chinese Empire in the 17th century. It was surrendered to Japan in 1895 after Imperial China lost the First Sino-Japanese War. Until the end of World War II, the island remained a Japanese colony for half a century. After the Allied defeat of Japan, China's ruling nationalist government, led by Kuomintang (KMT), took power in Taiwan. Not long after, the nationalists, which controlled the mainland under the Republic of China, ROC, banned following the defeat of Imperial China, came under renewed attack from an insurgent Chinese Communist Party. The two sides entered a bloody civil war that ended in the eventual defeat of the nationalists, who ran off to Taiwan, moving the seat of the ROC government to Taipei from Nanjing. Across the straits, the CCP took control and established the People's Republic of China, PRC, in Beijing. Both proclaimed themselves the only rightful government of the entire Chinese territory. In Taipei, the nationalist leader Chiang Kai-shek visualized retaking the mainland one day. In Beijing, CCP chairman Mao Zedong deemed Taiwan the last part of a united new China, a problem that had to be corrected sooner or later. In previous years, Taiwan has downplayed its territorial claims over mainland China and is today a vibrant democracy with its military, constitution, currency, and elected government, but it is not identified as an independent country and has become increasingly isolated diplomatically. Over the years, many governments have changed their diplomatic identification to Beijing from Taiwan, leaving only 15 diplomatic allies for Taiwan at the end of 2021. Taiwan is a political smudge on the validity of the Chinese Communist Party. Although the ruling party in Beijing has never practiced authority over the island, Chinese policymakers contemplate it as a section of the People's Republic of China. They took a vow to take it back by power if necessary. This uncompromising approach wasn't always. So in the early 1980s, Beijing brought the one country, two systems principle to regain control over Hong Kong and Macau simultaneously. The law set a roadmap for Taiwan's reunification with China somewhere down the line. However, in the decades after the merger of Hong Kong and Macau into China, Taiwan had moved further away. Beijing used political interference and economic isolation to persuade reunification, while Washington provided advanced weaponry to the Taiwanese. Military tensions fluctuated over the years, and Beijing's carrot and stick policy kept on hitting back. Eventually, in 2016, China severed all ties with Taiwan after the election of pro-independence forces. Washington then sold even more weapons to Taiwan, while Beijing increased military activity near the Taiwan Strait. The biggest game changer, however, was the protests of Hong Kong in 2019. The way Beijing took care of the demonstrations and its steady encroachment on Hong Kong's legislature completely vaporized the last chance for peaceful reunification of Taiwan and China, and they are now on irreparable ends. Beijing is changing from soft power to hard power. Its Air Force flies near the Taiwanese airspace on a daily basis, and its invasions have breached previously respected boundaries at the same time. China's Navy has retrieved high-tech weaponry for offensive purposes and openly drills for a Taiwan takeover in Beijing. Policymakers believe that America, for a long time, viewed as the custodian of Taiwan, might be too distracted at home to bear the cost of intervening on Taiwan's behalf. So there's talk of taking decisions against Taiwan sooner rather than later, yet of all the doubts on China's intentions for Taiwan, none carry more weight than the decision of Admiral Philip Davidson, the chief of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, during a Senate committee in February. Davidson argued that China's consistent growth and procurement of ships, warplanes, and rockets served to remove the United States as the highest power in Asia-Pacific by 2050. Taiwan is one of China's intentions, and Davidson believes a war is possible in the next 6 years. Bringing Taiwan under China's control would give Beijing a commanding position in Asia. It would establish the Chinese military in the middle of the first island chain, which is a string of islands extending from the Japanese archipelago to the Philippines to Indonesia power over Taiwan. And it would allow China to make terms in the nearby shipping lanes, giving it a huge advantage over rival powers, such as Japan and South Korea, who are entirely dependent on the sea lanes of communication. Having strong power in its enclosed seas, China would have free access to the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Needless to say, the danger is high for global and regional powers alike. But be that as it may, China faces an undeniable dilemma. Its military may not be up to the mark, at least not without taking huge losses. China has a huge military that is increasingly becoming more advanced. But it also has a lot of territories to cover, with powerful opponents on all fronts. Taiwan also has a sophisticated military, and its size is much smaller. They only need to employ in a small battle space facing one opponent. This, then coupled with the fact that America and Japan would de facto back Taiwan, level the playing field. China's annual military budget is estimated at $250 billion, compared to only $11 billion for Taiwan. The Chinese military also more than 10 times the manpower of the Taiwanese, and last year, Beijing authorized 25 advanced new ships to its fleet, including destroyers, cruisers, and ballistic missile submarines. Taiwan is also enlarging its navy, particularly its submarine fleet. By 2026, the Taiwanese fleet will multiply to 8 diesel-powered submarines, though the exact submarines would make China's amphibious landing all the harder the rate at which China is expanding its military capacity. It's incomparable. With each year, the military imbalance grows in favor of Beijing. Having said that, even with China's growing capacities, invading and taking over Taiwan would be an extraordinarily hard act. Not to mention a risky decision to invade Taiwan. Chinese forces would need to make an 8-hour journey into the mouth of Taiwanese firepower, coming from well-entrenched onshore positions. The bulk of the Chinese troops would be destroyed under fire, and those who do manage to reach the coastline. The Taiwanese coastline would come under a bombardment of artillery fire. Only a tenth of Taiwanese coastline is suitable for amphibious landing, so the odds of a surprise attack are less, and the Taiwanese would likely mobilize their forces at the predicated landing zones. Taiwan has roughly 140,000 troops, plus another 1.6 million in reserves, plus thousands of artillery pieces and armored fighting vehicles. Thus, to invade the island, China would need a large number of weapons. It currently does not have. Going up against such a gigantic force would be one of the greatest and most complex amphibious operations in history, and that says something about all kinds of military operations. Amphibious warfare is one of the most difficult because it requires precise coordination between land, air, and sea forces at a huge scale. Not every military has the ability of such a strategy. China has no experience in amphibious warfare. The last major war in China that occurred was the conflict on the border with Vietnam, and even then, it ended poorly still. China's amphibious limitation is only a tactic vulnerability if America gets involved, but for argument's sake, if somehow a Chinese amphibious assault succeeds, the Chinese army would then have to occupy an island with a hostile population of 23 million. That's not going to be easy, and insurgency would be unavoidable. So while China could manufacture a crisis to reverse Taiwan's drift towards independence, the prospects of an all-out invasion are overblown, at least in the coming decade. Even then, China would only invade Taiwan if it was confident in its victory or desperate for domestic approval. This assurance, however, doesn't mean that Taiwan can let its guard down. Quite the contrary, defense is the first duty of a state, and it is an unfortunate fact that peace can only be secured. With that, we've come to the end of the video. What do you think about this conflict? Do tell about your opinions in the comments section. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'll meet again with another video, and until then, take care.